Hello, how is everyone? Good morning. I'm really impressed with all of you coming here at 10 a.m., almost on the dot. My name is Mbalis Kakane. I'm a senior commissioning editor at the soon-to-be defunct NB Publishers because we're going under Jonathan Ball. I don't know if you've been following the literary press on that one, but we are in that process and transition. Where am I within that structure? I'm within the imprint called Tafelberg. Tafelberg was established. Tafelberg was established in 1954, and we do cutting-edge current affairs, history, business, and memoir. So that's a way for you to kind of see whether you fit into that or not. Personally, what kind of books do I publish? In the last year, so June to June, this is what I've done. You can assess for yourself what kind of biases exist. If we look at it, it looks like there's a lot of men. That is not a true representation of my list in the usual sense. For whatever reason, last year looked like this. It does not usually look like this. But you can see from that, a Great Johannesburg is a mixture of history and current affairs. It's about the collapse of the city and how to get that turned around. The Future was about future forecasting to see how you can place yourself in better stead with all the trends. Going on, Lucas Mangope is obviously a biography of the man. Alan Knott Craig, that's a business biography of his. The Truth About Cape Slavery, that's just Patrick Millet's third. Capitec, business biography. Tebe Kalafeng, that's memoir and travelogue. Parallel summits. So we do a bit of this as well, where it's a corporate sort of publishing / your normal publishing, like a combination. First generation founder, a bit of a younger entrepreneur business memoir. And The Mavericks is obviously another combo business memoir of the three gentlemen on the cover. What is the other biases that I notice? Okay, so as a commissioning editor, you, for the most part, go to the author to ask them to write the book. So very rarely do I have a book receive a book ready to go. So Great Johannesburg commissioned The Future. I got that ready to go. In fact, no, that was also commissioned, but it's almost like a combination. They already had the information, so I just wanted them to make that information a book. So it was a bit of a combination of the two. Lucas Mangope, that came from our submissions pile, so that's unusual. And it was very good. That's very unusual that something in the submissions pile be that good and ready to go. Life Lessons was ready to go. Truth About Cape Slavery was commissioned. Capitec was commissioned. The Traveler was ready to go. Parallel Summits was, it was a corporate one, so combo. First Generation Founder commissioned, and The Mavericks commissioned. Okay, what does the actual bestsellers list look like for nonfiction? Very uninspired. Yes, but some trends to look at there too, okay? K53, an all-round bestseller, no matter how you look at it, okay? And those are lifetime sales, so it's not just June to June. It's there for this period because it sells well at any point of the of our lives. It's always going to be there. The newest version, just as robust. It's just a resilient title, okay? Atomic Habits, come on, we've all heard of it, and it'll just keep spinning like that. That's a good backlister. Same with The Psychology of Money, the Bible. Who can say anything about that? That's always going to be there. Diary of a CEO, that's that business trend, right? Those books are just strong. They are robust. New trend we're seeing, religious memoirs or Christian publishing. That is very, very strong. The two biggest titles of the last year, by Rorisang and Bumi, can't argue with it. And those are South African titles, original titles, very different to whatever else you see up there. We got the Bible again, and of course Mel Robbins, who's a phenomenon, right? The other thing you're seeing there is a bias towards international titles. Why is that? So it's important that you know that, because when you come to me with a book, I've got to think about what international titles exist, because I have to compete with them, and it's very hard. So I try not to. So I want to talk about why these international titles are so strong against our own titles, okay? It just so happens that they have powerful distribution networks, right? If you are Penguin Random House, UK, US, Hachette, HarperCollins, whatever, you are literally one of the big 5 juggernauts in the world. Your level of capital and your level of marketing, your level of PR, everything, we are dwarfed under that. You just have powerful distribution networks, your marketing resources are astronomical, and you control a lot of the digital content as well. So a lot of it is just the power of these companies economically compared to us. It's basically the rest of the world, really the Western world, compared to South Africa. And I mean, we are, I think, the only African country anyway with a self-enclosed publishing industry like we have. So we are essentially competing with everyone. And then cultural and perception factors. This is one that we get a lot, right? There's a perceived notion that those books are just better than the books that we do, right? Somehow they're just more relevant or better made, or the authors are just more clever, whatever. Not true. And also the English language dominance in our reading, right? It means that books coming from other parts of English-speaking places are preferred a lot more. And then, yeah, I mean, the rest of the world's media has it's a type of imperialism. We know a lot more about them than they do about us, so we can't get away from their imaging and messaging, so their books are just outsized. Go to exclusive books and you see what I mean, okay? Yeah, and I mean, we talk about even the challenges within our local publishing. We are going to have a limited scale. Because we are only going to print a certain number of copies in line with the market that we expect. We have economic constraints like high production costs, while at the same time we can't just make our books whatever price we like, okay? We've got to consider what will actually sell at the end of the day and keep our pricing competitive. And then like limited support, obviously, you know, the government will do as much as they will do, and we've got to figure it out. And then there's like reading culture factors. We have a smaller reader base and our market size because of that smaller reader base. Yeah. So having gone through that, what does that tell you? It tells you that we've got to focus on publishing that is very South Africa-centric, that will be of interest to people here, so that we are not now trying to be the next Oprah's book club. We can't compete there. So it's got to be about us, so people are interested in buying it. And what does that look like for you in approaching a publisher, right? You've got to do some research and target a few of the publishers, okay? What is it that is actually on their list? Our list of publishers at the moment, you'd expect there to be more, but no. Penguin, Jonathan Ball, Pan Macmillan, NB, Jacana. So NB would be me, technically, now going under Jonathan Ball. So you can see how it's, yeah, shrinking in size. Check our current focus, right? Because it shifts over time. And why is it shifting? From what's selling, right? So we get a report called the Nielsen's report every week, right? So it'll tell us which titles are in the top 100, and even the bookstores will look at that top 100 and decide what books to restock or to stock in the first place. So it's important for us to look at that to even decide what we commission, what trends we follow globally, and so on, right? So you want to check our current focus areas by reviewing our catalog. That's how you can check. Our catalogs are for the year ahead, and you can see, okay, they're focusing on history and a particular kind of history. Maybe it's military history, because that's what's, you know, hot at the moment. Or maybe it's a certain kind of business memoir. Maybe it's about tech, whatever, but look at it. Okay, then you prepare your submissions package. And all of this is usually on the website of the publisher, but it kind of looks like something like this, right? You're gonna have your cover letter or your email that gives you or gives the publisher all the information that they might need about you and how to contact you. You need your synopsis, right? I need to understand what your book is about in as little reading as possible, around 200 to 300 words. Sample chapters are also very important. Very good to have an idea. Some of the time we really need to know if you can write at all, okay? And those sample chapters give us an idea of how you can pull together a narrative and what your sentences look like, okay? And then your biography just tells us a little bit more about whether you are credible to write on the topic, what experience you have in writing, and so on. Okay. Try and format your manuscript professionally. You're not going to get it, 100% right, but it does help, to just use a readable font, get good spacing going, good margins, good header and footer, name it appropriately. The document really should be in either Word or in PDF. Make it as easy for us as possible to read what you've submitted. Yeah, and submit according to the guidelines. Most of us will have similar guidelines, but just have a look. Do some people want it by email? All of us at this stage will want it by email. Some people still send us physical submissions for some reason, but it's not necessary. And follow the instructions as they are. Just give us a good subject line so we know it's actually a submission as opposed to something else. And then follow up appropriately. What's not going to happen is you're going to submit it today and get a response even a week from now. Very unlikely. Unless you know the publisher personally and you know for a fact they've carved out time to read your manuscript, it's not really going to work like that. You're going to have to give a couple of weeks for them to get to it. What we do where I am is we have team meetings probably every 2 weeks or once a month if we can get to it, and then all our submissions are discussed in that one go. So whatever backlog we have, we try and clear then, okay? And just follow up if you're unhappy and you're wondering why it's taking so long. Let us know and we'll give you a good reason. Okay. Don't just submit to that one publisher. Also, you're more than welcome to submit to a few of us. And also not just the big guys. There are a lot of smaller independent publishers too that will publish with a little bit more range than what some of us do. Because when we publish, we are looking at numbers almost exclusively. It's not sort of like a cultural enrichment exercise, which is sad. Yeah, we do some books like that, but for the most part, we have a budget, so we would have a limited scope. Whereas smaller independents will do a lot more different kinds of publishing. Of course, there's also self-publishing, which is a little bit tedious, but it's come up a lot in the last couple of years, and the quality's improved quite a bit. I think the skills are transferring there. And then literary agents are less of a concern in South Africa. We do have a few, and they usually, represent bigger authors like, I don't know, Dion Mayo, people like that. Okay. Important tips for success. Make sure your work fits the publisher's list and requirements. It will immediately be able to see this is one of ours. Professional presentation, be patient. Consider the multiple submissions, and then copyright. You must know when you submit it, you are protected. That is your work. You don't have to worry that someone's just going to nick it. We can't do that. It's still your work. And also, because I'm a nonfiction publisher, that also covers copyright for us in terms of if you're using other people's work in any way, you're supposed to get permission and clear that with them. So, for instance, in our publishing contract, we have that clearly. We want all those permissions up front. Okay. Okay, now we're on a journey to getting to that print book, right? You've had the submission, we've had the conversation, or rather in our case, what happens is we have a submissions meeting every 6 weeks or so, and whatever I've received that I think is good, I will pitch there. So it's kind of like a bit of a Shark Tank. I end up getting a stomach ache. By the end of the day, I want to go sleep. But yeah, it's that. You pitch the book as best you can. They decide if it's going to work as a panel of people. I don't decide on my own. You get a lot of questions. You push back. You answer the questions and so on. And by the end, they'll decide. Maybe you pitched 4, you get 2 in, right? Which is what happened to me this week. So then you're in, right? And now we need to negotiate this, or rather, I need to give you an offer letter. For me, it's just an email saying you're in, it worked, right? Nothing formal. And then I tell you, okay, now we need to talk about the contract. We need to review the terms. Usually these are the biggest things about the terms that you need to look at. The royalty rates range from 5 to 15. I can tell you for us, we're at that end of the range. 5 is quite low. We're basically at 15. What rights you want to grant to us. There's a whole slew of rights that we usually will ask, global versus local, print translation, but usually it's things like translation and foreign rights and things of that nature. Some of our books do sell rights. We go to Frankfurt as NB and Jonathan Ball, we do go to Frankfurt and the London Book Fair. Some books do sell into those markets, but also it's rights like documentaries, movies, films, theater. You know, those also sell quite a bit more than you'd expect. Territory rights, we usually will try to get international rights precisely because we have the team internally to sell those rights elsewhere, and most authors just don't have that skill, okay? Whether or not you get an advance is not a bonus payment, okay? It's like all the royalties we're expecting that you're gonna make from your book, you're getting that, a bit of that up front, a percentage of that. So you think about that also, whether you want that money now or later, but it's your money anyway. And then the contract duration is how long we hold the rights, and that's usually just what the country's laws are, the copyright laws, right? 50 years after the author's death or whatever it is at the moment. So then we sit and we go back and forth on those terms. Some people consult an attorney, but you know, these contracts are so standard and simple, you don't even need one really. But I don't prefer to rush that process. Rather, you understand all the terms, we can go through it together, and we sit in a Teams meeting and go through each part of it. And then you're ready to sign, okay? Both of us sign, and that's the beginning of the journey. Okay, then you have the structural or developmental edit, right? This happens whether or not I commissioned you or not. In a submission that was already written, I might take it to a reader, a manuscript reader, who's going to find the problems in the manuscript for me. Several of those, maybe 2 people or 3 people. They're going to read it and find the gaps, find the problems, and then we will sit there. Now that I have the issues, I sit and work on a developmental edit for that manuscript. And if you are writing it because I asked you to, then you're submitting your chapters at, you know, regular intervals. And I will then, with each chapter, decide what's going on and whether, 1, it still meets the mandate in your contract, and 2, whether it's working as a book still, and how to course correct if that's not the case. Yeah, and there's a deadline for that. So the contract will tell you your deadline up front, which is why these nice regular check-ins are better, so that you meet that deadline. And then you have your manuscript submission date, and we go into a copy edit, okay? And that's more that focuses on a sentence level, grammar, style, consistency. And for us as nonfiction, factual accuracy is quite important. So an editor there is looking at, are the names in here all correct? Are the place names correct? Are the dates correct? Do things happen when you say they happened? They go and check those types of things too. And then, yeah, I'll review the editor's changes, and you'll review, but mostly it's between me and the editor. A lot of authors kind of feel like they can follow through the whole process, but very few people are both writers and editors. They can't really do both. Proofreading is right at the end. I want to almost say page design will come before the proofreading. So what is page design? People think you just take a Word document, turn it into a PDF, and it's a book. No. Somebody sits in InDesign and crafts a book out of it. So there's a style to the font, there's a style to everything that you're seeing in that book. Somebody is deciding, from having read and felt what the book is about, what the style of the book will be. And I decide with that page designer if that style is appropriate, okay? So by the time it's copy edited, it's gone into that page design. That's when we get to proofreading, because that's what proofs are. Proofs are when the page designer has turned it into a proof, okay, by, you know, styling the book already. That's when we're getting to the errors that have crept in, because editing is not a perfect process. All of publishing is humans. So proofreading is just making sure that when I read it, I didn't introduce an extra T or an extra comma somewhere, and you didn't do that when you were trying to fix something. So we have the proofreader looking at it, I'm looking at it, and sometimes there's multiple proofreaders. Maybe it's quite a thick text and it's history and whatever. So it might not just be the one, right? You check it, you get the opportunity to check it as well. And usually I'll ask you to check for things I can't know that are wrong in it, right? That you, maybe it's a biography. I can't know your grandmother's name. You know that. So make sure to check those things are correct. I can only check if that name is maybe spelled correctly, but I don't know if that was her name. So you'll be asked to approve. Well, to be honest, once you've given me your proof checks and your corrections, that's you approving it on my end, okay? Right, for me, cover design, it starts from the moment you give me your manuscript, okay? So your cover design will be done way before the book is sort of edited, and by then I've already got a cover for you. I've been working on it, okay? I go to a designer and ask for cover concepts, and the marketing team has their influence on that process. The bookstores sometimes have an influence on that. If they see it and they don't like it, we do go back to the drawing board, because they will tell us, well, this won't appeal to our customer base, or this doesn't actually work because there's a book similar to this right now that, they'll have their reasons. And usually the contract will tell you that, the cover is the prerogative of the publisher. And why is that? Because the cover is marketing. It's not a visual art project. It's actually marketing. It's like it's just what is going to grab the book reader's attention the best on a shelf. That's what we care about, okay? So yes, I spoke about the interior design of the book and the typesetting, and you'll find that some of these things look out of place because maybe publishers also do them in different order, but that's just how we do it. So we've got the proofs at that stage. The ISBN, that I will request as soon as I have a okay for the concept, okay? Once I get that okay, I request that. So yeah, your book will have an international standard book number, and the National Library of South Africa gives us those. And they also have to get a copy of each book, so we send them a copy. And then the printing. This is actually so accurate. The first print run, and the reason I say it's accurate is because print runs differ based on how the market is going at the moment. Sometimes you'll be able to sell out 3,000 copies. Sometimes it's lower than that. At the moment, I think it's somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 that you'll be able to sell, which is quite little if you think about it. But there are also like thousands and thousands of titles a year, so maybe not. And then we do the digital files and the print ebook versions, or else we do that. And some books go through an audiobook process as well, but that's through various contracts and arrangements. Then you get the marketing and promotion. Our contract will ask that you set aside the time, all right? When the book is out, a couple of months of your time to do things like interviews, to do things like to write maybe op-eds if you can, but set aside the time to either sit in a studio, be on the phone, however the interview will go. So yeah, we stipulate the author responsibilities. Things like social media are important. Some people have an author website, but really, we will also consider your social media even before we agree on the manuscript. And that seems unfair, but it just depends what the book is about. If the book is, as a time, okay, cool. Okay. Oh, I'm actually probably right at the end in any case. Yeah, I'm almost done. The publisher's activities, we do a press release, a media outreach. We've got a big mailing list, and throughout the media, we know who to send it to. For book reviews, for promotional material, we send out promotional materials, and we arrange the bookstore placements. We arrange the book launch, usually in the city that you live in, book signings, media events, what have you. At the release date, we ship the copies to the bookstore. Probably 2 weeks before the official release date, you'll start seeing your book for us. And the major distribution channels are the usual you'd expect: exclusive books, bargain books, online retailers like Loot, Takealot, and Amazon, and independent bookstores. Okay, launch events we've spoken about. The post-publication activities for the publisher, we monitor your sales. Once you get to a certain point, we reprint, which is always a good thing. And our royalty payments are 6 months. Every 6 months, you'll get a royalty payment based on your sales. And there's ongoing promotion. So you'll see the literary festivals throughout the year. They ask for the authors and their books quite early to set up their programs, but you'll do the gauntlet of that as well. Okay, this gives you an almost what the time frames look like, but important tips. Maintain regular contact with your editor, being me. Meet your deadlines. Be very proactive on your promotion. Be patient with the process. You probably, if you're doing it for the first time, you'll be frustrated a lot. Rights management, we keep track of that, all your rights. And then, yeah, we maintain your records and all the correspondence and sales reports. So you'll know exactly how much you've sold because we have it in the system. Okay. That's what it is on my end.
Morning, everyone. I am Steve Vermeulen, and I work at Kwela Books in the fiction division. I'm the publisher and also Humbali's colleague under what is still called NB Publishers until further notice. So, okay, we are multitasking today, which is not my strong suit, but let's do it. I will be speaking from a traditional publishing standpoint. That really just means with traditional publishing, we then manage and carry the cost of the entire production process, meaning that we take it from manuscript to the book form that readers then see in bookstores. And one of the questions I get quite often, because I manage the Kwela mailbox, so no, we are not a printer, and you also cannot pay us to distribute a book that we did not publish. And then just a bit about NB Publishers. So it is one of the biggest trade publishing houses in South Africa. At the moment, we are mainly publishing in English and Afrikaans for the adult market and also the children and youth market, so across genres, fiction and non-fiction, although we do work very separately. So it was very interesting to listen to Humbali's talk because I learned a bit more about how they do things. And then just, you know, that we publish under the following imprints, which is Human and Rousseau, Tafelberg. They are legacy imprints. Kweleria as well, Lux Verbi, which focuses on Christian fiction and non-fiction, and then we have Kwela Books. This is just the logos. You may be familiar, because I'm hoping all of you sitting in here definitely read local books and support our local authors, so you'll be familiar with some of these logos here. And then a weird little slide about me. I'm not going to read it, but I actually started at Kwela Books as an intern, and then I just never left. I don't think I believe in luck, but I do believe in kismet. I was very much interested in Kwela when I was at university, started reading poetry by Ronaldo Comfort, Nathan Trantral. I mean, that was a big kind of shift in the industry at the time. And I then sent the Kwela mailbox an email because I didn't really know much about the publishing space. I think it's elusive, still very much is. So it's great to have sessions like these. Anyway, so I still have that email that I sent in 2013, and now I'm at the helm of Kwela Fiction. That's kismet, not luck. So just a little bit about the local literary landscape, particularly if you're interested in publishing or publishing a fiction book. And look, I'm speaking from the Kwela perspective. I cannot speak for other publishers and what it is that they're currently looking at. So at Kwela, what we're always looking for is authentic Southern African stories and characters. We publish literary fiction, suspense, crime, popular, which is commercial fiction, so humor, relationship stories, women's fiction, that sort of thing. What Kwela is not looking at right now is coffee table books and drama scripts. Although with drama scripts, there should be a little asterisk. I think one of, don't come for me, anybody. Any other Kwela author that's listening, don't come for me. But one of the coolest projects I worked on is Chase Reese wrote the novella Kines, which was actually originally a drama script, and I had read about it in the newspaper and contacted them and asked them to turn it into a novella because I knew that we wouldn't be able to publish it as a drama script, but I knew that it was a really important story and also that it was written in Kaaps. and then the thing about short story collections and poetry collections. I mean, look, the local literary landscape for English authors, it's really small, especially compared to Afrikaans. I mean, Afrikaans titles only compete with other Afrikaans titles. And then the English writers, I mean, they're competing with the import, with all the international titles, which means that it's a relatively small space. And then it's even smaller for poetry collections and short story anthologies. Okay, so you finished your manuscript, now what? This is where I think we work a little differently to nonfiction. So we do prefer the complete manuscript. We don't accept sample chapters or a synopsis. It helps to make a thorough assessment of the story because of the particular things that we are looking at, which is plot trajectory, pace, character development. You can't really see that in a few samples. But I do believe in the power of the slash. I found Conita Loxton's being Carrie in slash in my first year when I was an intern, and then I've published many other debut authors from the slash pile. So I do believe in the power of the slash. But once you've finished your manuscript and you're thinking about submitting it, I think Mbali also mentioned this, it's researching different publishing houses and imprints and knowing what their mandate is. What are they currently looking at? I mean, you want to set yourself up for success instead of just, sending it out to everyone and then receiving lots of rejection letters, and not because of the merit of the work, but just that it doesn't fit the specific mandate or scope of that imprint. Then yes, there are things like checking guidelines and requirements. So there are certain publishing houses that have open calls, but during a specific time. At Quella, it's open season all year round. And then, yes, the basics of formatting the manuscript, it isn't important and it isn't something that, we'll hold against you, but it does show us that you've put in the effort. It's also easier to read, and really really basic formatting. But what does help is a short summary and author profile, although, that doesn't really influence the publication decision that we'll make eventually. And then you don't need an agent to submit to local publishing houses. Certain people have specific ideas for their writing career, and so they do try and find an agent first. It's not that we don't work with agents, but you don't need one to submit your manuscript in the hopes of getting it published. And then the assessment process, which is a character building one for authors new and more established. Okay, the arrows don't even make sense, but we prefer electronic submissions. I don't mind hard copy, but since COVID, I think we stopped accepting hard copies. I did used to get a lot of very short love stories from prison. I kind of miss them. Kept my job interesting. So we tell people that the assessment process takes at least 4 months. There's a lot of things happening in the background. It's not just that we're not wanting to give you feedback. When we read a manuscript that we think has potential, we think there's something there, we will send it out for an external evaluation. That's to external readers. That's usually published authors, academics, people in the literary space, and they will then send us a report, and that is what we would then use to take to our concept or pitch meetings. You put together a whole little pitch and hope that, marketing, sales, and management believe in the book as much as you do. So that, for me, is a character building experience. And then we obviously share the reports with authors, whether we go ahead and publish the book or not, because it is really helpful when they're working on a new draft. And then, even if we do make the publication decision and we offer you publication, it doesn't mean that the work is done. There will still be another draft that needs to be worked on. a publication offer is really made on a first draft. But if you have an editor or publisher that really is invested in this book, they will work with you to get it to the stage where it is ready for publication. And that means different things for different people. Like, I'm currently working with a writer who's sending me a chapter a week. So that's been an interesting experience for me. And then, yeah, the first draft is the beginning of something great. That is just because it is a longer process, I think, than people who are not in the literary space realize. I think few readers realize how much work goes into that book that you eventually have in your hand. I mean, it's months of work. I published Aisha Kasim's Suitcase of Memory 2021, but she had been working on that book for 15 years. And it was more just her own journey with the story, figuring out whose perspective to tell it from, you know, is it working, should it be historical fiction, that sort of thing. But yeah, Celeste is looking very shocked at the 15 years. But it's 15 years and she's gone on to win 2 really big prizes now. So you have to believe in the work and then find someone else who believes in it. And then, so just that it's a good starting point and not a finished product, and that's just me warning you because of the amount of work that's going to go into it. When we look at the manuscript for the first time, we don't look at grammar, spelling, and punctuation, that sort of thing. We really are looking at plot, character development, writing style. Is it a new and inventive story? Is it a really fresh voice? You know, are you giving us a new kind of, even if you're playing around with genres, because I think the space is also changing if you look at the types of genres that people are publishing now. So with sci-fi, that sort of thing, the space changes. We look at trends. I think hopefully we also want to set the trend and be ahead of the curve. So I thought I'd just focus on a few things that I've picked up with first-time writers in their manuscripts. And little tidbits that I give. Because look, when we send feedback and we're not really going to publish the book, you do try and be encouraging. Sometimes you can't, but you do try. So one of the things I usually say is how you tell the story is just as important as what you're trying to say. So the how is important, right? And that goes back to the very kind of, and it sounds silly, but the showing versus telling. So actually showing someone the story instead of just retelling the story. I mean, take them on the journey, show them how the action unfolds, that sort of thing. And then I think and this goes back to the Aisha Kasim story about point of view, where you have to decide what is the best way to tell the story. Is it really from first person? I know that a lot of first-time writers usually write from first person, and that doesn't always work. I mean, you have to have a very unique writing style, or that character has to have a really unique kind of way of telling us a story and getting the reader involved. And so sometimes I always suggest that third person is best, just when you're trying. And then things like overwriting. You know, she got up from the chair, she then took her bag, and then she walked all the way to the door, but she first took the handle, blah, 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 you know, that sort of thing. And I mean, it just slows down the pace and you kind of lose the reader. And then emotional investment. I think one of the most memorable tools of storytelling is your characters. You know, people have to become emotionally invested in your character, because then they'll keep reading. Like, you're rooting for them. You want them to win. In some cases, you want them to fail. I mean, I like a good antagonist. I think the anti-hero is underrated. So just like little basic things. And then the production process, Humbali has touched on it a bit. So even though our assessment process and what we're looking for is very different, our production process is very much the same. I mean, out of the almost hundreds of manuscripts that Kwela receives, we only publish 10 to 12 books a year. It's tough. and I mean, there are also instances where I really believe in a manuscript, and I'm the only one. Because, I mean, yes, there's the creative part and the important work that we do, but it is also a business, and that's kind of something you have to keep in the back of your head. And that's usually the tough part of the job. How long does it take to publish a book? I said a safe answer is 9 months, and that includes the time that it takes the writer to work on the final draft. So the writer will work on a final draft with feedback from the publisher, and then we'll enter external editing, which can take about a month. We're working with external freelancers. So you do have to have a bit of leeway. We'll have cover design happening in the background. You need to have a cover ready 4 months before publication date, because that's when our sales and marketing team go out to bookstores. They start subbing the book, start getting people excited about this title. And then we have proofreading, which is always a fun thing. You're collating, the proofreader. Well, we only use one external proofreader, and then we have the author, and then it's my changes, and all 3 sets are then collated into one set of proofs, which the page designer then has to tediously work through. And then we have the proofreading is the last stage. The printing of the book, that a book gets sent to print 2 months before its official publication date. And then during that time, the author is meeting with the publicist to work on marketing plans, ideas, that sort of thing. So even though that's where my job ends when the book goes to print, the author's job really only starts once the book is out there in the world. And Mbali did speak about the importance of participating in the marketing of your own book. And also, I do think that we're still very much underestimating the power of social media. And it's free. So this is just an example of a production timeline. And also, this is a tight timeline for me. This is when I really want something out and I have to make it work, because the thing that does influence the publication date is not just the amount of work maybe that still has to happen on the manuscript, but it is also what the publisher's schedule looks like and where they can fit the book in. Also, what is the best time you think that a book should appear? Like, this is maybe not founded on anything, but I feel with a debut, it's always great to have them out in the beginning of the year. Not a lot of publishers are publishing books. It's not going to be competing with other local titles. I very rarely publish later in the year. I think the bigger publishing houses and internationally, they're all pushing books into the market for the Christmas market. And then I just feel like if it's a local, particularly if it's a debut author, it's very tough to then compete in that market. Yeah, so the book will go to print 5 December and the publishing date is only 30 January. And then I asked some of the Kwela authors what the most surprising thing about the production process was for them. I asked Mia, she's the author of Mermaid Fillet, and she said how seeing my book cover design made everything real. There's something so rewarding about a visual representation after being absorbed in such a text-heavy process. It's also a big jump from writing in total solitude to deep collaboration. So the deep collaboration is also that production process is very much collaborative, and that's very important for me. I don't want authors to feel like, we kind of just take the work, run with it, and then publish it. The author is involved at every single step of the production process. I'm sure they're very annoyed every time they see my name in their mailbox. But I think it's important because it's not my name that's going to be on the book, it's yours. And you have to be really happy with the way the work turned out. And you're the one who has to go out and market it. So that's important. I might have to just trim some of them, but Lebo, she's the author of Bantu Knots, and she said definitely the amount of work it takes between submitting the manuscript to getting the book on the shelf. I didn't know that a manuscript has to pass through so many tests, external readers, before you get offered a contract. And then there's the editing process. Getting those first edits can be overwhelming, especially seeing so many corrections. I've learned not to be so precious about my work and trust the experienced voices around me. That's one thing. You're going to have to not, yeah, what's that? You have to cut your darlings? What is that? Yeah, kill the darlings. That you have to be okay with that. And then Shafanaz, she is the author of Darlings of Durban, and she had actually been self-publishing her work or a series of hers for a really long time. And then she decided to give traditional publishing a try. She says, actually, I was somewhat surprised that I had that much involvement in the process. I assumed authors don't have that much say in the editing, cover design, etc. And as an indie author, I'm obviously very involved and even pedantic. I appreciated that you were patient and allowed me to try different fonts and colors, allowed me a great deal of input in the design and edits. And then we have Alistair, who's the author of The Lucky One. Alistair's first book, It Doesn't Have to Be This Way, I actually found that in the Slush. Alistair's now just published his third book. Yeah, It Doesn't Have to Be This Way, The Child, and then now it's a short story collection. And so that, just a note on when I said about, the market being relatively small for short story collections, it is easier if you have a profile and if you have a bit of a name. And so if that is kind of your thing and that's what you want to do, I do advise that you get your name out there. Start by, sending your poetry, your short story collections to the really great literary journals, online and paper editions that we have. Start creating a name for yourself, because then it's easier when you pitch yourself to publishers. So Alistair said, the thing that surprised me most was how different it felt to hold a finished published novel in my hands. I wasn't prepared for how amazing that feeling is. And after reading the manuscript however many dozens of times, the fact that it felt so different reading the book was a cool surprise. I read it cover to cover as a book and just got to enjoy it as a reader rather than obsess over it as a writer, editor. Because I will tell you, the process is very interesting when you have two very pedantic people reading, rereading, reading the whole manuscript again, right up until the date that it has to go to the printers. And then Marina, this is another author whose manuscript I found in the slush pile. She's working on a series. Single Minded came out last year, and then Three Echoes will be out at the end of June. She said, what surprised me most was how much effort went into creating the best version of the book, all the back and forth, all the liaising, editing, and editing. So you're obviously very brave if you want to be a writer, and I hope that this hasn't really scared you. It is a lot of work, but I do think that is, if it's your passion, I think people who work in the publishing space and people who want to be writers, it has to be your passion. Like, it's the thing that's going to keep you going. And then that's my story. And then I did ask some of our more established authors to be motivational. They weren't really motivational. I mean, Conita, she was motivational. She said, be brave with everything and be yourself through it all. Nick said, most important advice for a debut author, patience. Most new authors are not patient. They send you something this week and already want an answer next week. They don't know the process is a bit long, shame. You have to read as a publisher and make a decision. Also, debut authors don't believe in rewriting. They must be open to rewrite. And Sia Kumalo said, publishing and book sales, and all of this is a business, and that each author must see their book as part of their own business development. The art side is, of course, important, but also the business end and how to work towards selling off a print run, and then the rest got cut off. But anyway, Sia was just commenting on the business side of things, which I love, and which unfortunately is important. Because I think it's very different with, I mean, I'm not sure how it works with independent publishers, but with traditional publishers, we do have budget. We do have to think about the financial things, even if we don't really want to. And that's it.
Okay, hello and welcome back. My name is Karina Szczurek, and I am the publisher at Caravan Press. Although that doesn't really define what I do, because every time somebody asks me, oh, you are from Caravan Press, and I always have to say, no, I am Caravan Press. So you see the entirety of the publishing house standing in front of you. I am one of the independent publishers in the country. There are a few wonderful others like me trying to pioneer the way. One with whom I work very closely is Ushlanga Press, and they publish only poetry. Then there is Mojaji Books, there is Protea Book House, my own publisher. I think that the most important thing that I can tell you about what I do is that, and where the huge difference is between me and traditional publishing, is that I've been around the publishing industry for well over 20 years, 20 years in South Africa, in just about every imaginable capacity that you can think of. So I primarily consider myself a reader, and I, even looking at the presentations today, I was looking at the books and I thought, oh, I love that one, and I love that one. Oh yeah, and this is one of my favorite authors, and I really read extremely widely in South African literature. From my accent, you will realize that I'm not South African. I came to live here 20 years ago, and it is because of South African stories. And I'm one of those people, I can truly tell you that a short story changed my life. I read one short story by one of South Africa's greatest writers, Nadine Gordimer, and it opened a key for me to the world of South African literature, and eventually that is what brought me to the country. So a story changed my life, and here I am. I didn't think that I would ever become a publisher. So I started off as a reader, and then I am a writer. I have a few books published with my name on them, on the cover. And I published with basically all the major publishers in the country. So I have quite a lot of experience as a writer in the publishing industry. But for a very long time, the way I started on the other side is I was for a very long time a book reviewer for all the major publications in South Africa. I started off at the Independent, at Sunday Independent, and then continued through everywhere. And so I've been reading books for a living and writing them for a long time. And one of the things that I was doing while I was book reviewing, I was also reading, you both mentioned this, as an external reader for publishers. And it was specifically during that activity and while being involved with quite a few short story projects in the country. So many of you might know that there is something like Short Story Day Africa or Short Sharp Stories. And also literary magazines were mentioned before. I was also involved with New Contrast. While being involved in these projects and while reading for other publishers, I realized that quite a lot of really, really brilliant, amazing stories were simply falling through the cracks of publishing. And one of them was, I don't have the book here with me, but the Dawn Garish's Breaking Milk. It was one of the first novels that I published. And between the time I read her manuscript and recommended it wholeheartedly to a publisher, and the time I published that manuscript, it was exactly 10 years. So I first read it in 2009, and I published it in 2019. And she was like the prime example of what I felt. I thought that story just needed to be out there. And I wasn't thinking, when I was reading this, I wasn't thinking of becoming a publisher. But when I started a few years later thinking about it, I thought, where is that book? So the moment I started Caravan Press, I approached Dawn, and we've been publishing ever since. And because short stories were mentioned, and this is a very good example of it. So this book of short stories that we published together might not be a great seller, and might not be what you as a publisher might want to encourage. But what was amazing about this short story collection is that for her as an author, it won her 2 major prizes in the country. And so this book in prize money alone won her well over 120,000 rand. To get that in royalties, it's very, very difficult. So in a sense, I think what makes me very, very different from everything else that happens in the country is that I know the industry inside and out, and I follow the processes that were described to you. But I have different considerations when I publish a book, and the main considerations that I'm not restricted by are financial, but not in the sense that I don't have a budget. Obviously, I have an extremely limited budget, so it's super small amounts of money that I work with. But what I can do is, because I have absolutely no overheads, so I work from home, I don't employ anybody, my editing and production costs, proofreading are minimal because I can do most of these things myself. I've been an editor for a very, very long time and a writer, and I've worked with writers from across the continent because of all the projects that I've been involved. So I have a lot of experience working with many, many different voices and also different genres. My costs are basically the freelance designers that I work with and printing. So that reduces the idea of where a book can break even to an absolute minimum. But for me, so finances, of course, is a consideration because there is a limit to what I can finance. But I can tell you that we've been able to, in the 6 years since I've existed, so since 2019, we've been able to increase our turnover by about 20% every year. And so I started off with the idea of publishing 4 to 6 books every year, and last year I ended up publishing 17. That is the absolute limit. I don't think that I have a capacity to do more without employing other people. I have the huge privilege now for the first time of working with an intern, and she's sitting right here among you with Anna. And even though we've been working together for only a few days, she's already proving a gigantic help. So I'm telling myself the whole time I'm not allowed to get used to this because it's really nice. But also what then makes me different is, of course, because I don't have those considerations, I know I can break even because I need to sell anywhere between 200 to 350 books to break even, and from then on the projects start generating a little bit of income. So and all I have to do is I still haven't had a salary from Caravan Press or a proper salary, but what I've been able to do is to just grow it and grow it and grow it, which is quite amazing. And I earn my money by freelancing, doing everything that I usually do anyway. And I hope that one day I will become financially independent as in Caravan Press as well. And I think we are heading in that direction. But yeah, it's unpredictable and also wonderful and scary. And yes, and sometimes I lie awake and think, okay, how am I going to pay this printer's bill? But at the end of the day, I am in this incredibly privileged position that I really can publish what I want to. And so the choices that I make are extremely eclectic. And just to show you, so what Caravan Press can do. The first book that I ever published is Shadow Flicker by Melissa Volker. I also reissued an edition, South African edition of her first published novel, A Fractured Land, that was published in the US and had no local distribution. And I risked publishing the two books at the same time. Since then, we published a novella of hers, and she has written another novel that is in production, and she has written a non-fiction title about surfing, women in surfing in South Africa, that I hope to publish later this year. Very soon, I told you about Breaking Milk, Dawn Garish's book. That was 10 years in the making since I first read the manuscript, and then I could approach her and say, you know, I'm doing this crazy thing, would you like to do it with me? What was amazing about the experience is that she ended up on the Sunday Times Fiction Prize shortlist with that book. So we did make the right decision at the time. In the first year, I also published this incredible biography of Tembi Mchali-Jones, Theatre Road. And again, a very, very crazy project. I was approached about it in August 2019, where Sindiwe Magona, the author to whom Tembi told her story, said to me, look, we would love to have this out by Tembi's 70th birthday. And I said, oh yes, well, so when is this? And she said, on November the 7th, and this is August. And the book hasn't been entirely written yet at that stage. And we made it happen. We launched it on Tembi's birthday. So this is what kind of independence allows you to do. And without compromising on the quality, because I could devote my entire living, breathing, sort of non-sleeping life for the next few weeks just to this project, and I pulled also the kind of friends from the industry into it, and so yeah, we managed to do it. I know that traditional publishers can do this as well, and there are sometimes such burning stories that you also will have a turnaround time that you will make it happen within a few weeks, but I don't have to go through any kind of meetings or considerations. If I read a few pages of a manuscript and I love it, I will go like, well, yes, let's do this. It might just take a while. And especially now that I've kind of reached the capacity of what I can do, it takes longer and longer for me to publish a book. And since the author list is also growing, and I want to make sure that I can publish an author throughout their career, the authors who have already published with me have priority on the list. But the lists are very, very flexible. So where I also differ, where it's not as comfortable and not as nice for the author in comparison to traditional publishing, is that I am a one-woman show. So, and I always warn people who start working with me that, look, if anything happens to me, I'm sick, I'm grieving, I'm on holiday, nothing is happening. And I cannot predict these things. And last year, for example, I had such a brutal year where just everything was literally falling apart around me, including my health as well. And so I had to beg the whole time for consideration, for patience, for understanding. And I think what allows Caravan Press still to function, which I find very, very important to the project, is that it's essential for me that I've built a community of readers and writers around Caravan Press who are extremely supportive of what we do. Because I do not have a marketing department, I don't have a publicist. Some people kind of almost like blame me and say, but you are everywhere, Karina. And I said, yes, I am everywhere because I don't have a publicist. So I am the person who will cover the launches, take the photographs, arrange the interviews, and just run around like a headless chicken most of the time at festivals in order to make this happen. But the team of authors who are on board and the incredible community of readers around us have been just amazing, just absolutely amazing. So this is what allows me to function. I am, though, very strict on certain things. So I am mostly completely disorganized. But when it comes to finances on the receiving end, so when it comes to royalties and royalty statements and the transparency of what happens at the press, that's very important to me. So I have an accountant, I have financial statements, and I pay royalties like everybody does on the 15th of May and the 15th of November. And I will issue royalty statements. It was not possible only once in the 6 years that I've been operating, where I had to approach a few of my office and say, look, cash flow is very difficult right now. I will only be able to pay you 3 weeks later. And that happened. So I was able to keep that promise. What was interesting, why that happened, why the cash flow problem arose, was not because of something negative. It was actually something very, very positive that you would think is the thing that every publisher longs for. But when you are an independent publisher with very limited resources, this is what is your greatest challenge, and that is we suddenly had a bestseller on our hands. And so I had to print thousands of books that I had not budgeted for. And the story of that bestseller, I think, is also a very interesting. It is Andrew Brown's The Bitterness of Olives. The kind of story that falls through the cracks of traditional publishing. Andrew is or he published all his previous books first independently, so he self-published, I think, his first novel, but since then he had been publishing with Penguin Random House, and they rejected this manuscript or didn't want to publish it in the kind of time frame that was still acceptable. And so at the end of that entire negotiation process, he was left without a publisher, and that was the most important story to him that he has ever written. And I didn't know him very well, but I was approached via the wonderful book lounge to talk to him, and we published the book. It's set in the Middle East, and it was published 3 weeks before October the 7th. So, but I can tell you that I don't think that the timing of the publication would have influenced, I think, the sales, obviously, to some extent. But I knew from the very first page of that manuscript that I was holding something very, very special in my hands, and that it is a story that people will find incredibly rewarding. And I'm so glad that I wasn't wrong. What else can I tell you? Because this was mentioned, I work with an agent. So we are constantly trying to place our books in other markets. It's extremely difficult, but I really believe that South Africa has some stunning stories that need to be shared. So I work with Katrina Wessels, and we are constantly pushing and trying to sell the rights. How are we doing time? Still okay, yeah. So I work with a literary agent. We've managed to place a book in the US, 2 books in the UK, and I'm about to, I published here a novel by Elke Böhmer, Ice Shock, that came out only 3 weeks ago, that is going to be also published in the UK soon. What I'm able to do is also give a home to books that are out of print. So because I do what I do, I don't pulp books. A backlist is not really a consideration because of my small print runs. If I have to, I just reprint. So I am not sitting with a lot of stock in the warehouse. So I don't have to worry about that kind of management. I don't want to pulp books. I know it's a necessity in traditional publishing, but I've had a few titles go out of print for all kinds of reasons, where we always intended the publication to be very limited, but otherwise I will continue keeping everything that is possible in print. Oh yes, and the independence allows me to publish the weirdest things. For example, you were talking about how do we get people to read when we are all distracted. Well, one of the things that we are trying is flash fiction and non-fiction. These are under 500 words, and they are excellent writing by some of the best writers that we have in the country, and you literally have to spend a few minutes on each of these stories, and they will blow your mind. So they are like, I don't know, book TikTok version of stories. What I've been able to do is also to publish unusual texts. So Landlines by Shari Daya is a poetry collection, but there is quite a lot of prose in it. So it's a mixture of genres. Her prose is extremely poetic, so it fits that this is called a poetry collection, and it is her first poetry collection. But when you see, so some of it is traditional poems, and then some of it is prose. And because I love it, because I fell in love with it, I could publish this book. Another unusual genre that I'm not shying away from is novella. So The Frightened by Letekulem Simang is a novella. I was very pleased with the judges of the Sunday Times that they allowed me, despite it being a novella, to enter it for the Sunday Times Fiction Prize, and it was longlisted for the prize. It didn't go further, but I was very pleased that they acknowledged that this was possible. And then collaborations where two short story writers wrote a collection together. And you cannot identify until the very end who wrote which story. So, but thematically the collection is very coherent, and you know when you read it why the two of them collaborated like this. I have also done things like this is the collection of essays, and when I met this writer and saw how old she was, I just couldn't believe that somebody that young, because she wrote this in her 20s, could have the depth of not only thinking but expression that she brings to the table. And I know I shouldn't be biased. I really love them all, but I just think that this is the most beautiful book that we published. I just love the way this book looks and feels. We did a sort of soft touch finish on it, so when you touch it, it feels velvety. Then what we can also do, because I can, is when and this was quite a scary moment, I must tell you, when J.M. Coetzee writes to you and says, I've got this manuscript that I would like you to publish, but it's not my own, but I edited it and I wrote a foreword to it. You kind of go, oh gosh, is this going to be good? Because how do you say no to J.M. Coetzee? And it was brilliant. But sadly, the writer, John T. Driver, was no longer alive at the time the book came to me. And so his brother-in-law, J.M. Coetzee, was handling or trying to get it published. And I had the huge honor of co-publishing this with Ushlanga Press, because Nick Mulgrew at Ushlanga was John T. Driver's last poetry publisher in the country. So this project came our way and we did it, and it became, even though it was only published in South Africa, because of the kind of engagement that this book got internationally, it was one of the New Statesman's books of the year last year, even though we cannot distribute it in the UK, but it was still on the list. Caravan Press has been wonderfully present at prizes. I think by now we've won all the major prizes in the country. The one that I'm most proud of is the K. Selo Deka Literary Memorial Award, and because it is given to authors under 40. And it's one of my passions to develop as many young writers as possible and to work with writers. When it comes to submissions, I do not have any kind of restrictions. You can basically sell any story to me that I can fall in love with. My huge consideration is because I'm so hands-on throughout the entire process. I have to know that I will be able to read this text over and over and over again. And I think, okay, if I can read it 6 times and still love it, then I possibly can find other readers to share it with. So that's my only consideration. I am about to publish my first book of selected plays by a playwright, South African playwright, whose work I admire tremendously. It's Louis Viljoen. I'm working with Andre Trantal on the first graphic novel that we are going to publish. I did publish for my first children's book. And one of the things that I'm super passionate about is supporting the endeavors of Karen Jennings, who I also have the privilege of co-publishing with a UK publisher, and the Island Prize. So a recent publication from that, the Island Prize is supported by a UK publisher, Holland House Books. They do not have distribution in the country, but together with Caravan Press, we make it possible for the books that, especially that have some kind of a connection to South Africa directly. It's a Pan-African prize, but Andile Chelle is a Cape Town-based author, and she was the runner-up, I think, in 2023. And her novel has just been published in the UK, and I'm helping it to distribute it here in South Africa. So Caravan Press also has a few titles on our distribution list where overseas publishers have no reach in South Africa, and where people somehow find me and somehow convince me to do this with them. And so this is what we do. And just to show you what we were able to do, also give homes to books that were out of print, where we redesigned them. And so Tracy Going's Brutal Legacy was previously published by Melinda Ferguson under NB, and it was about to go out of print, and so she approached us to do a new edition. And Consuelo Rollins' The Good Cemetery Guide, her publisher went under, and this was first published, I think, in 2012. So it's quite a long time ago. But there were still so many readers approaching Consuelo and asking, how can we get this book? And there was quite a hot second-hand market for The Good Cemetery Guide. And when Consuelo approached me and said, could we do something about this? Could we reissue this book? That's what we did. And as you would have seen from the covers, very different. I am very much involved in really all the aspects of the production process, but I allow writers to guide me, and this is purely from my own experience as a published writer. I know what it feels like to have a cover forced on you, because marketing people think that this is what's going to attract them, a reader to your book, and you can't look at it yourself. I know what that feels like, and I promised myself, even though a few of the covers that I have been involved in are not my favorites and would not have been my first choices, I always went with what the authors wanted, because I want the author to feel that not only they can be proud of what they are holding in their hands, but that they actually want to share it with other people, and that's more important to me than perhaps strangers picking up the book. And yeah, I think I'm just thinking. I think I've mentioned everything apart from the fact that I do have a bias, despite the variety of the books that I publish. I mostly work with women. So I think about 65% of the authors and books we've published are by women. And that has a very strong reason bound to reality. I am redressing some of history's failures. I think I want to end on a note to say that people always ask me, you know, weren't you scared? Of course I was scared. But very early on in the process, I understood that I could not fail. I thought from the beginning that there might be a time where money runs out, my energy runs out, something happens that I will have to stop publishing. But I always knew that until that moment, there would have been all those books that suddenly had a life that were not there before. And I thought that could never be a failure. So I don't know whether I'll be around in 2 years' time. I hope so. But if not, these books still will be. So, yeah. Thank you.